we are starting with the posterior abdominal wall. Okay, and if you see the posterior abdominal wall, we usually has the 5 lumbar vertebra and 3 to 4 muscles, one of which transversus abdominis you have done with the muscles of the anterior abdominal wall because it is coming from behind then forward. The remaining will be do today, and the other one is the 12th rib. Okay, so 12th rib, the 5 lumbar vertebra and the muscles plus the small part of the, that is the upper part of the iliac bone also. So if you see posteriorly in the midline, we have the 5 lumbar vertebra. Okay, in the midline we have the 5 lumbar vertebra, and you already know that every vertebra is separated from the next one by the presence of a fibrocartilaginous disc, which is named as the intervertebral disc. Okay, so in the midline we have the 5 lumbar vertebra with the intervertebral disc between them, plus we have the muscles which are from the back moving towards the lateral side. The one which is just in the posterior aspect, that is the last pair of ribs, which is named as the 12th rib. Okay, then from there we have the muscle which are named as the psoas muscle, we have the quadratus lumborum muscles, and we have the iliacus muscles plus the aponeurosis, as I said, aponeurosis of the transversus abdominis muscle. So these are the muscles, and if the pectoralis minor, when it is present, it is also present in the posterior wall of the abdomen. So in the midline, lumbar vertebra with intervertebral disc, and then on each side towards the lateral side we have the 12th rib with other muscles, psoas major, quadratus lumborum, iliacus muscle, plus the aponeurosis of the transversus abdominis muscle, and if present, the psoas minor muscle. This shows the posterior abdominal wall. In the midline, if you see, there are the 5 lumbar vertebra and disc between them, and if you move laterally, we have the 12th rib, we have a pair of ribs on each side, that is the 12th pair of ribs, and then we have the psoas major muscle, we have the quadratus lumborum muscle further laterally, and below if you move, as I said, on the posterior wall we have a small part of the iliac bone, and that part lies above the pelvic brim, where we have the, on each side of the iliac bone medially, we have the fossas which are named as the iliac fossa, from where the iliacus muscle originates. So in this way, in the posterior abdominal wall, we have in the midline vertebra with intervertebral disc. Then further laterally, if you go, you have the on each side pair of ribs, 12 pair of ribs. Then psoas major, quadratus lumborum, and below we go to the, we have the iliacus muscle, and anterior to the psoas major, if present, is the psoas minor muscle. Okay, so these are the boundaries, you can say, or the components of the posterior abdominal wall. And you already know the features of the vertebra, that the vertebra, they have body, they have the pedicles, then from the pedicle arises the transverse processes, then further anteriorly we have the lamina. The lamina two unites, and then they give rise to the formation of the spine. And if you see the body of the lumbar vertebra, they are kidney shaped, you can say, kidney shaped, and we have the foramen, this is the vertebral foramen, and on each side you can say you have the, coming from the posterior aspect of the body, these are the pedicles, and these two pedicles gives rise on each side the transverse processes, and there we have the lamina on each side. Anterior to the transverse process on each side towards the midline, we have the two laminae which unite and gives rise to the formation of the spinous process. And spinous process, in case of lumbar vertebra, you will see it is quadrangular in shape. It is given over here. It is quadrangular shape. Body of the lumbar vertebra is always thick. Okay, thick body, and it is concave posteriorly. Due to this concavity, you can see this is the body. Okay, it is slightly wedge shape. When you see the disc, that is the intervertebral disc on the body, it is also a slightly wedge shape. What is the significance of that wedge shape? You know your vertebral column in the region of the lumbar vertebra, what is its direction?
Inside.
It is
Inside.
inside where? So we go, this is the sacrum. Okay, sacrum, which is shows concavity forward. And then we have the lumbar vertebra, which shows concavity backward. Okay, so on the posterior aspect, as I said, you can see in this diagram, there is concavity. This is, and the disc is also slightly wedge shaped, due to which what happens? It helps in the maintaining of this posture of the vertebral column. That is, which is shown concavity toward the back. If it is full of like this, if it is full like this, so the backward concavity cannot be possible. So due to the presence of the backward concavity, the disc is also shows slight concavity on the backward, and the posture of the lumbar vertebra, you can see it is concave backward and convex forward. Massive kidney shaped kidney, fifth number, and fifth number vertebra you already know, which is articulating with the first sacral vertebra to form the sacroiliac joint. And intervertebral vertebral disc is a wedge-shaped and responsive for the normal concavity of the curvature of the vertebral column. Okay? This is the appearance. This is again the same vertebra. And this shows, you can see in this diagram, the presence of the intervertebral disc, the presence of the posterior concavity of the vertebral column in the region of lumbar vertebra, or you can say in the region of abdomen. And their articulation above with the vertebra, one above and below with the other one, and below, that is the fifth number vertebra, which articulates with the first sacral vertebra to form the sacroiliac joint. Then on the sides, we move from the posterior aspect, we move to the side where we have the 12th pair of ribs, and these pair of ribs, they are shorter as compared when we start from the above downward. These ribs are shorter and they are articulating posteriorly with the posteriorly. This pair of ribs articulate with which vertebra? Which thoracic vertebra? 12. And this only articulate with the 12th. Rest of the ribs, if you remember, the posterior end of the ribs, they have two facets, demi-facet you can say. One for the same number, one for the vertebra above. So, but here there is no articulation with the first lumbar vertebra. So they will have a single facet. The 12th pair of ribs will have a single facet for articulation with the vertebra of its number. And then they are short, they are anterior, and they are pointed, having a small amount or piece of cartilage, and goes into the wall, or you can say in the muscles of the anterior abdominal wall. They are anterior and does not articulate with the sternum. They are free. So they are there. That's why they are also named as the floating ribs. 11th and 12th both are named as the floating rib. Then we have the below, as I said, we have a small part of the iliac bone, which whose inner aspect, that is the iliac fossa, from where the origin of the iliacus muscle takes place, which lies above the pelvic brim. If you remember the anatomy of the hip bone, then you will find, when you see the whole of the pelvic brim, and you find out the joint pelvic brim above this area on inside internally, we have the fossa named as the iliac fossa, for the region of the iliacus muscle. So that part also forms a small part of the posterior abdominal wall. This is 12th rib, and if you see the next, from the first rib we move towards the 12th rib, the angle is reducing. Okay, when we reach it to the 12th rib, the angle is completely, there is no angle, and they are coming posteriorly then forward. So there is no angle in case of 12th rib, which is named as the angle of the rib. Okay. So this part, this is the part of the ilium which forming the iliac fossa, which is a part of the posterior abdominal wall. Okay. This shows from the posterior aspect diagram, which has the 12th rib. 12th rib is present. This is the 12th rib. This is the 12th rib. This shows again the 12th rib, and anterior to this we have the kidneys. Okay. Then we have the muscles which are forming the posterior abdominal. First of all is the psoas major muscle, and if you see the psoas major muscle, these psoas major muscles originate from the root of the transverse processes, because they are arising from the sides of the bodies of the vertebra, plus the intervertebral disc from 12th thoracic to 5th lumbar vertebra. Okay, is it clear? They are arising or originating from the root of the transverse processes, from the sides of the bodies of the vertebra, and from the insides of the, you can say, intervertebral disc, and it is passing downward on each side of the vertebra, and it passes under the can say under the inguinal ligament, okay, and then passes towards their insertion over the lesser trochanter of the femur. Okay, so this, in this way you can see that this is the origin of the psoas major muscle, and passes under the inguinal ligament to its insertion over the lesser trochanter of the femur. This is another view of this psoas major muscle. So nerve supply is by lumbar plexus, and the action of this psoas major muscle is that flexion this way. Suppose if you fix your abdomen, then there will be flexion of the thigh at the hip joint. But if you fix your thigh, then there will be flexion of your trunk. Okay, so this is the flexion of the action of the psoas major muscle. Then we have the quadratus lumborum muscle. Quadratus lumborum muscle, it is a quadrangular muscle. The psoas was coming from above down, but this quadratus muscle originating from the iliac crest and from the iliolumbar ligament, and also from the lower sides of the bodies of the lower lumbar vertebra, maybe L4 or L5. Then it passes upward. Here you can, then it is passes upward to be inserted over the inferior surface of the border of the 12th rib. Okay, 12th rib, lower border of the 12th rib, and the transverse processes of the upper 4 lumbar vertebra. This is the quadratus lumborum, originating from the iliac crest. Plus we have the iliolumbar ligament on the medial side, then it passes upward to be inserted to the inferior border of the 12th rib, plus it also passes to be attached on the transverse process of the first 4 lumbar vertebra. This is the quadratus lumborum muscle. Now both the psoas major and the quadratus lumborum muscle, they are covered by the fascia. And these fascia over the psoas major muscle, it is from the medial arcuate ligament, and over the quadratus lumborum muscle, it from the lateral arcuate ligament. Is it clear? Because it is psoas is towards the midline, and laterally we have the quadratus lumborum muscle. When the fascia passing over it, when the fascia is passing over it, when the fascia passing over the quadratus lumborum, you can see the muscle when it is coming like this. This is the fascia, it is coming over under the fascia. This will form the lateral arcuate ligament, and on the midline, towards the midline, passes the psoas major muscle from above down, and this portion covering the anterior aspect of the psoas major, it will form the medial arcuate ligament. Medial arcuate or the lateral arcuate ligament, they are nothing but due to the passage of the quadratus lumborum and the psoas major muscle, the fascia is slightly folded, you can see. In this way, the name is given as the lateral arcuate ligament and the medial arcuate ligament. They are not a separate entity, but the thickening of the fascia by the passage of the two muscles. Clear? The quadratus lumborum and the psoas major muscle. Nerve supply coming from the lumbar plexus. Now, as it is going from below upward towards the 12th rib, so it helps in fixing the 12th rib during the deep respiration. Okay? So, when you take the deep respiration, your rib cage is also moving, not only by the muscles of the intercostal, but also it is due to the action of the quadratus lumborum, which fixes the 12th ribs during the process of deep respiration. And other action is, you can say, laterally flexes the vertebral column. When it contracts, it helps in laterally flexing the vertebral column on the same side. How it appears? It will be like this. We are doing the exercise. It is when you are flexing your trunk towards the right side, it is performed by the contraction of the quadratus lumborum of the same side. Okay? So this position can be availed by the contraction of the quadratus lumborum of the same side. This slide again shows the quadratus lumborum, 12 for the quadratus lumborum muscle. This is the psoas major muscle, and this is the region of the junction of the 12th thoracic vertebra with the first lumbar vertebra. Then we come to the iliacus muscle. As we know, the iliacus muscle originates from the iliac fossa. Originating from the iliac fossa, and then it passes down, where it passes on the lateral side of the lateral side of the psoas and joins it before its insertion over the lesser trochanter of the femur in a single tendon named as the iliopsoas muscle. So iliacus muscle, after it's originating from the iliac fossa, it passes down on the lateral side of the psoas and then joins and form a single tendon named as the iliopsoas muscle to be inserted over the lesser trochanter of femur. Nerve supply, which receives the femoral branch of the lumbar plexus, and action is same to that of the psoas major muscle. Same what was the flexion of the trunk when the thigh is fixed, and when the trunk is fixed, it has the flexion of the thigh at the hip joint. Okay, so these are the actions of the iliacus muscle. This is the iliacus muscle, you can see on the lateral side of the psoas major and inserted over the lesser trochanter of the femur. Psoas minor, as I said, if it is present, it is a long slender muscle when it is originating from the body sides of the bodies of the 12th thoracic and the first lumbar vertebra. First, it lies on the anterior aspect. First, it lies on the lateral side of the on the medial side of the psoas muscle. Then it comes over its anterior side. Originating from where, if you see in this diagram, it is red colored psoas minor. Originating from the sides of the bodies of 12th thoracic and the first lumbar vertebra. Then first initially it is lying on the medial side of the psoas major. Then it comes over its anterior aspect and passes down to be inserted at the hip bone over iliopubic eminence, over the iliopubic eminence and the pectineal line. You will see if you take the hip bone, when you will go through the iliopubic, that is the pectineal line, on the just below the iliac fossa there is slight eminence or prominence which is named as the iliopubic eminence, because it is at the junction of the iliac bone with that of the pubic bone. So this is named as the iliopubic eminence, and which is for the insertion of the psoas minor muscle. Nerve supply coming from the L1, that is anterior rami of the L1, and it is the weak flexor of the trunk or the this you can see the three colored muscle, the iliacus muscle. Then you have the psoas major, and this which is lying anterior to the psoas major, it is the psoas minor muscle, and going to its insertion over the iliopubic eminence. Okay, so this was all about the posterior abdominal wall. The 5 rubber vertebra with their intervertebral disc. Then we have the 12th pair of ribs. Then we have the psoas major, quadratus lumborum, psoas coming from above down, quadratus lumborum coming from below up. Then third muscle is the iliacus muscle, which is the lower part of the posterior abdominal wall. Then fourth, if present, is the psoas minor muscle plus some of the amniotic fibers of the transversus abdominis muscle. Okay, they are all forming the posterior abdominal wall, and we should know the features of the lumbar vertebra plus the intervertebral disc, why there is concavity, and this concavity is due to the wedge-shaped appearance of the intervertebral disc. Then we come to the lumbar plexus. The lumbar plexus, it is formed by the anterior rami of the lumbar nerves, and when they came out from the intervertebral foramina, what happens anteriorly? They are embedded, because here on each side of the vertebral column we have a muscle named as the psoas major muscle. Okay, this is the psoas. Suppose this is the psoas major muscle running. The fibers after coming, they come over the, or you can say inside the psoas major muscle. Some fibers come from its medial. This is suppose right psoas. Some of the nerve, they originate from the medial side or medial border of the psoas major, and some originate from the lateral side. Like if you see, this is the psoas major muscle. Okay. Then the branches, you can say the lumbar plexus, which is lying behind it, they come like this. Some going or originate, this is the lateral side and this is the medial side, and some originate from the medial border, some originate means they come out to supply, and one of them it comes from the anterior surface of the psoas major muscle. Is it clear? The lumbar plexus after they came out from the anterior side of the intervertebral foramina, they on each side they have the muscle named as the psoas. They enter, you can say, it is also said they are formed within the substance of the psoas major muscle. In the books it is also written the lumbar plexus, they are formed within the substance of the psoas major muscle because they are like this, and the fibers, the lumbar plexus L1, L2, L3, L4 and L5, they came out and they came into the substance of the psoas major. Then after their formation, some fibers or the branches, they originate from the medial side, some originate from the lateral side, and some come out from the anterior aspect of the psoas major muscle. Okay? So after they came out, their name will be different, we will see, but you should keep in mind that the lumbar plexus, it is written in the book, the lumbar plexus is formed in the substance of the psoas major muscle, and after the formation, some fibers or the branches they came from the medial border, some branches they came out from the lateral border, and some comes from the anterior aspect of the psoas major muscle. Emerge from the lateral and the medial borders and from the anterior surface of the psoas major muscle. Now the one which are coming from the lateral border of the psoas major muscle, they are the ilioinguinal nerves, iliohypogastric nerve, then the lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh, and the femoral nerve. Okay. So these are the four branches which are coming out from the lateral border of the psoas major muscle. Then we have the branches which are coming out from the medial border of the psoas major muscle. From the medial border, they are the, one is the obturator nerve and the other is the part of the, you can say, the of the lumbosacral trunk. Okay, lumbosacral trunk, that is from the L4 part of the lumbosacral trunk, they are coming from the medial border. Then one which is coming from the anterior surface of the psoas major muscle, it is the genital branch of the genitofemoral nerve. Okay, so these are the branches, you can say, which are coming from the lateral border, coming from the medial border, and from the anterior surface of the lumbar plexus. You should keep in mind what branches are coming from the lateral border, what branches are coming from the medial border, and which one is coming from the anterior surface of the psoas major muscle. This time what question can be asked, that what name the branches which are coming from the lateral border, or which one is not coming from the lateral border or from the medial border or from the anterior surface. Okay. This is the lumbar plexus. You can see the lumbar plexus. If you see the root, if you find the root value of, this is the L1, L2, L3 and L4. Okay. Iliohypogastric, if you find the root, what is the root value? L1. Okay. Ilioinguinal nerve, again it is having the L1. And this is the genitofemoral nerve. It has the root value from L1 and L2. Then lateral cutaneous nerve of thigh, it is coming from 2, L2 and L3. Okay. Femoral nerve, it is coming from the, it is the thickest nerve of the lumbar plexus, which is coming from L2, L3 and the L4 nerve. They are all coming, giving rise to the formation. Then we have the obturator nerve. Again it has the same root value, that is from the L2, L3 and L4. Clear? Any question regarding this lumbar plexus and the posterior abdominal wall? Yes. No question? Clear? Yes.
What's the branch coming from? Medial aspect?
The medial aspect, there are two branches are coming on. If you see, these are the two. One is the fourth part, you can say part of the lumbosacral trunk, that is from the L4, and other one is the obturator nerve. They are coming from the medial border. And the lateral border we have four: ilioinguinal, iliohypogastric, lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh, and the femoral nerve. and from the anterior aspect comes out the genitofemoral muscle. This slide shows the quadratus lumborum muscle. If you see, quadratus lumborum muscle, quadrangular in shape. Here again shows the same. Yes, posterior abdominal wall and the lumbar plexus. No question? Clear? These two things are clear. Posterior abdominal wall, their components, bony and the muscular components. And then we have done the lumbar plexus, their root value, and where they are formed and how their branches are coming out from the lateral border, from the medial border, and from the anterior aspect of the psoas major muscle. Okay. Then we have another thing. We have done the prostate gland, okay, the last lecture, and we have time. And one of the most of these I think we have done. Prostate gland, if you remember the prostate gland, it produces the secretions which is added to the urethra along with the seminal fluid, okay, when the ejaculation process is going on. But what happens in case of some conditions like the benign prostatic hypertrophy is not a, but if it progress further into the malignancy, that is the cancer, then what will happen? The secretions of these prostate gland, they are accumulated. First they are accumulated like the secretion, which is one is the acid phosphatase enzymes. Other thing is that a small amount of epithelial cells of the prostate, they usually appears in the blood, okay, small amount in the normal condition. But when there is the condition when there is no excretion of the acid phosphatase from the prostate gland, what will happen? Their level in the blood rises, okay, plus the proteins which are in the epithelium of the prostate, their level also increases in the blood in case of cancers or malignancy. Then these proteins which are specific for the prostate gland, they are named as PSA, prostate specific antigens, okay. Their level increases in the blood. It means there is some pathology within the prostate gland, and this pathology leads to the blockage of its secretions into the urine, which then increases in the blood, okay. So when in the age of 50 or more than 50 years of age, when the male patient came to the doctor with the problem of difficulty in urine, or when there is a problem like urgency in urine. It means urgency means when he went to the bathroom, he came out, then he said, oh, I have to go bathroom again. Because what? Due to the malignancy, what happens? The prostate size increases, and this increase in size, it presses the urethra. Okay, it presses the urethra. What happened? Then some of the urine left in the bladder, and some is passed out. Which left in the bladder, it has some irritating effect, due to which the patient says, oh, I have to go to bathroom again. We have rather the normal people, they go once and then settle for 2 or 3 hours. But that patient which are for the malignancies, they have multiple times they have to go to the bathroom in order to satisfy themselves that the urine has passed. Okay. Now sometimes what happens in case of malignancy or the cancer, what will be the appearance with the complaint? The doctor usually first do the blood test, in which they usually look for the PSA, prostate specific antigen. okay, or the level of the acid phosphatase, which is much increased in case of these conditions. Now, so this is can be confirmed. Now, there are some conditions which is without malignancy, which is named as BPH, benign prostatic hypertrophy, which is the, you can say, the beginning after the 50 years of age. We have how many lobes of the prostate? Five. Anterior, inferior, posterior, median, and two lateral. Okay. Now, in case of BPH, that is benign prostatic hypertrophy, the median lobe increases in size and the two lateral lobes also increases. Now, if you remember the diagram, when the median lobe increases, the urethra, which is coming from the bladder, it goes like this. Here we have the median lobe. When it increases in size, it stretches the urethra. If you this diagram. Okay, if the median lobe when it increases, it will increase or it will stretch the urethra. Okay, and along with this, there is two lateral lobes which are also increases, which presses the urethra, so that the passage of urine, okay, the speed of, you can say, passage of urine, it is less due to the reduced lumen of the urethra, due to the two lateral lobe and median lobe. The urethra is stretched, plus the pressure from the two sides and from below. There is a condition developed that stasis of urine takes place in the bladder, and due to the stasis of the urine in the bladder, the condition named as the cystitis, that is the infection of the urine in the bladder. Infection of urine in the bladder named as the cystitis can take place. Okay, so due to this hypertrophy of, which is named as benign prostatic hypertrophy, the median lobe, this is the median lobe, which when it increases, what it do, it will stretch the urine in like this. Okay, and then from the two sides, the two lateral lobe, it compresses it. It is stretched and it is compressed also. So the lumen is reduced, which has the effect due to which the stasis of urine takes place here back in the urinary bladder. Okay, and thereby can take place the infection, which is named as the cystitis, infection of urine in the bladder. And for this, when the patient first came to the doctor with age and the complaint of multiple, doctor, I went to the bathroom multiple times at night usually or in the daytime, and any other complaint, no, they will do the what? They will do the acid phosphatase lab test plus PSA, prostate specific antigen. If they are okay or within normal, then the doctor will think about the BPH, benign prostatic hypertrophy. To find out that it is increased in hypertrophy or not, we do the rectal examination, which is named as PR examination. Per rectal examination, we use the glove, we apply the gel on the finger, and then we put the finger into the rectum. Now, what is the way of examination? When you put the finger inside the rectum, we first feel the anal canal, we first feel the rectum. Then we turn our finger as it is in the next diagram forward, because the prostate is anterior to the rectum. Remember, clear? When you put finger through the anus like this, behind we have rectum, anterior we have prostate. First we feel the anterior surface of rectum, then we turn our finger like this, because anteriorly you have the prostate, and then you feel the median lobe and the lateral lobe. Either if they are enlarged, you will feel a glandular structure with your finger. Okay, so this is how the prostate is examined. Only way which is non-invasive is the per rectal examination. If the doctor find anything, any nodular enlargement, then he can go for the other invasive procedure with the dye or with the MRI or CT scan. But initially, usually the PR examination, that is the per rectal examination of the patient is done to find out if there is any enlarged prostate or not. Okay? So this is how the you should keep in mind that PSA or the prostate specific antigen is usually laboratory examination for the carcinoma or the cancers of the prostate, and also the acid phosphatase. Yes. This is all for today. Any questions? No questions. No question means either it's clear or it's not clear. Okay.